Okay, here is an idea for some painting activity. You'll notice that I'm doing this in the kitchen, and that is because I don't want to spill anything on the carpet that might stain the carpet. So kitchen is a good working space, or if you have some other spot in your house that doesn't have a carpet on it, that's good. Now you notice I have my watercolors here, but I'm not going to use watercolor. I'm going to use something else. We've talked before in art about paints that any water-based paint basically has two parts to it. Pigment, that's the part that actually gives it the color, and that comes from minerals and other things in nature, and water. And they're mixed together, and the more water, the lighter the shade is, and the less water, the more pigment, the darker it is. So I thought we'd use something a little bit different today to work with instead of watercolor paints, because not everyone has a watercolor paint set. So I've got my little container here, and I'm going to walk over here to one of my favorite parts of the kitchen, and that is where the coffee maker resides. I'm going to take a little bit of coffee, not a lot, but a little bit of coffee, pour it into my container. So coffee can be used as a paint. The coffee grounds are the pigment, and the amount of water in there, well, that's the water in the mixture. Now let's see what kind of a look I can get in my painting here. Well, right now it's very light. It's a very light brown, I can see. So how would I make that darker if I wanted to make it darker? Well, I'd need to increase the amount of pigment in my mixture, because right now I've got water in here. Now this could be actually nice for doing a little bit of painting first, and maybe I'm going to make this just part of my painting that is kind of light, and then I'm going to make it a little bit darker. So how could I make it a little bit darker? I need some more pigment in it. So come on over here, let's see, I need a spoon. And I'm going to use my coffee maker here. And this is the old grounds in here. Taking some of the old grounds, being careful not to spill it all over the floor or anything like that. I'm going to stir some more grounds into my mixture here. Let's see if that makes it a little bit darker here in my work. Okay. Maybe I'll use a slightly different brush this time. See what I get this time. Ah, yes, I'm getting a little bit darker color there. So, coffee is a type of watercolor. You could use it as a watercolor. Now, of course, you could mix other watercolors in there. In fact, I could use my coffee mixture here and mix in some other colors and just see what I get. Maybe I'd get some colors that are much different than what I had thought before. Oh, it's kind of interesting. So you might be surprised if you look around the house to see what kinds of things you could use to paint with. I'll bet you'd find a couple of things that you hadn't really imagined before. But I'll give you a hint to start with. Coffee is a good one to start with, although don't take any of the coffee before your parents have had a chance to have their coffee in the morning. Make sure the coffee is finished for the day before you start stealing any coffee, because that could lead to problems. So we talked about using coffee as a paint. You can use other materials too. Fruit juices, for example, often could be used for creating paint. Tea is another beverage that works well. And one of the things that's great about tea, especially if you're using a typical black tea, Irish breakfast, Earl Grey, something like that, is it's a little bit easier to create some different strengths, as it were. With coffee, as we mentioned, you can add some grounds back into what you're doing. But with tea, you can basically just let the tea bag sit in the water longer, and that's going to create a stronger color, a stronger shade of the tea. All right, this tea has been brewing for about 1 minute right now, and if I use this, you're going to see, okay, it's there. You can see some brown. It's a bit light, though. We're going to let it steep or brew for another minute or two, and we'll see if you can notice the difference. All right, let's see now after 2 minutes of brewing, is it any darker? Yes, I'd say it's significantly darker at this point. So, tea, coffee, fruit juice, all of these things are possible paints, basically materials you can create with. One of the things that's kind of fun about using tea too is the tea bag itself. If I bring this up here, I could use this like a printmaking kind of thing and just create images. Oh, that's kind of cool, isn't it? Check that out. I could do that sort of thing all over the page. There you go. There are art materials everywhere if you're just willing to look for them.